Hello, Wasteland! Yes, welcome back, brothers! That's right, we're here to look at Gaslands UK's Car of the Month competition for April 2024. That's right, the 5th season of this fine competition, my brothers. As always, I am your host, James Hall of JH Miniatures, and this episode has been kindly sponsored and brought to us by a brand new sponsor for 2024. That's right, boys and girls, Darkstar Molten Metallic Paints. Oh, yes. So can we all just take a moment to give a massive shout out, thank you to Darkstar for sponsoring this wonderful community and providing not just the theme but also the prize support for this month and many more to come. Specialising specifically in all the bright, shiny metallic paints that we all know and love. Let's be brutally honest, guys, they're pretty hard to do by hand with just any old craft store paint, right? These guys have it down to a science, from wonderful bronze and chrome finish paints all the way up to dull coppers and brasses. They have everything. The prizes they have given for this competition are absolutely fantastic. We have prizes for first, second and third place. First place getting 12 bottles of Darkstar paints or a voucher to the same value to use on the Darkstar website. Second place getting 6 bottles of paint and third place getting 3. Oh yes. And with a sponsor like this, you know that the theme had to be something that's just absolutely outrageous, something that just gets back to the heart, mad scientist genius at the heart of all of our Gasland builds, including the one, the only, that's right, Mishkin as a sponsor. You know the sort. We're looking for high-tech, heavily Russian-themed, Soviet Union-themed build. We wanted to see the forgotten weapons of the Cold War, my brothers. We wanted to see vehicles with lasers and arc weapons and Tesla coils and reactor engines and all the crazy super science stuff that you can imagine.
The entire world and all of its history is mine to command and conquer.
Oh yes, and what can I say, you guys have not disappointed. With over 30 finished entries this month, it has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. Oh yes.
No, it isn't ready. It hasn't been tested. We don't even know if it works.
And I have been kindly supported and guest starring this episode by the Ayatollah of rock and roller, the architect of the Armageddon, the creator of the apocalypse. That's right, the one, the only, Mike Hutchinson.
It's me, it's Mike. Hello, James, how do you do?
Living the dream, as always, my brother. So yes, thank you so much for joining us. The actual creator of Gaslands has deigned to bring his light to this fine competition and community of ours, and to talk about all the lovely toy cars made by some of our fine entrants.
Yes, I'm extremely excited by this because this is one of the privileges now of being full-time on games design. If anyone doesn't know, hasn't been following along on Planet Smasher Games on YouTube, I quit my job at the beginning of the year, as well James knows. And so now I've got all day, every day to work on my games. Some new ones like Hobgoblin that just got released, and regaining some time for my precious and beloved Gasland. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, and I'm really excited to see these builds. I haven't seen them yet. You've sent me the links to them, but I have remained pure, and I'm just excited to see what we got.
No, absolutely. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us. I think we're the only competition in the Wasteland right now that can hope to even say, oh yeah, we've got the creator of the game coming to look at our toy cars. So again, thank you so much, Mike. But without any further ado, April's theme was Mishkin. So we're looking at sort of Soviet era, super high-tech Tesla weapons and arc reactors and all that good stuff. So let us start with Clint Gribbly Cook. Clint, my friend, what can I say? It's definitely on theme. There's no doubt about that, with the 4 hover engines, but it's got a bit of a converter car element to it, with the wheels at the front sort of coming down into little jet turbines. But no, it wonderfully captures the theme this month. With, I think it ticks every box, doesn't it? Because it's got the military green, it's got the arc reactor, it's got the hover and jet engines.
What I love is the use of wire, both in a sort of crazy wound about the arc projector thing, but also all these wires spilling out in this ramshackle way from the back of the truck. It looks like a crazed invention. A fan and a cultist of the cult of Mishkin, but perhaps yet to achieve their finest and tidiest work, but definitely in the throes of maximum creativity and mad invention.
I love the front turbine jet engines, but I don't love the rear ones. They're a little bit traffic cone with cotton wool coming out the end, which to be fair is, in fitting with the look. But I suppose one question is where would you put a race template on this when you're putting it on the board? Because there's no.
James brings up the issue of practicality in game. Tut tut. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose I would align it with the radar dish hanging off the front. I like the superglued tissue or cotton wool. It's a thing that I think harks back to the earliest days of me supergluing my fingers together, and I always like that look. And the way that he's really worked the yellow paint in there, so it's got a really nice transition. And the detail that the sort of fan wheel things at the front don't have fire, but the jet boosters definitely do.
It does help to separate it, doesn't it? It does help to go, oh no, these are the jet engines at the back and the stabilizing ones at the rear wheel arches, and then these are the actual jet turbines at the front pulling it forwards. So it is.
I also like the attention of detail that the smoke is sort of coloured like the dust where it hits the ground, and you don't see that colour repeated on the back. So there's some thought been put into the sort of environment that this thing is crossing over, which I got to say, that's the kind of attention to detail I often fail to include in my builds.
And the thing is, this vehicle looks great in profile. It looks great when focusing on the sort of the exciting, like the arc weaponry and the jet engines and all that. But then to look at the front of the actual truck cabin, the reflections on the windscreens, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Can't fault those at all. But some of the rust patching, and we do see this a lot of the time, people will just splat on the brown and the orange wherever they like, and it's like it needs to be a bit more thought out. It needs to be, okay, where would the rain actually pool on this? Where would the weathering naturally occur? But then, there's so much going on here. It is.
That sort of intentionality and understanding of weathering, I think, is something that really takes a lot of practice to get right. I definitely am in the camp of still just sponging on scrag brown and hoping that it looks okay.
But it's a wonderful little bit of conversion work. And again, what a way to start off this month, and what a way to start off reviewing these builds.
Excellent work, Clint. Excellent work.
No, absolutely fantastic work. As always, Clint, the level that we've come to expect from you, my friend. And I look forward to seeing what you do for May's Car of the Month competition. It would be remiss of me if we didn't then look at another wonderful Soviet super science inspired build and have a look at the work of Richard Fairbrass and his build for this month.
This one just says abandoned space program to me, and it's great. I really like the striking use of the blue and the white and the red throughout, tying it together, but with all the gribbly colors. When I start to look into the details, it at least in these photos, it starts to get a little bit messy, but the overall impact of that three colors plus a sort of muddiness to make those colors pop out, I don't know, it's really striking. The profile of this car is really quite strange because it's got these blobby sticky out wheels and these big things at the back. So kind of my brain doesn't know whether it's long or it's wide.
You see, this is the thing, because it's a six-wheeler. He's extended that front sort of engine compartment of the.
Oh, is that a conversion to add the extension there, do you think?
Yeah, but then are they meant to be wheels, or is this meant to be a hover build? Because he's got a photo there where he's taken the body off and you can actually see the inside. And the wheels are still there, sort of implying that, no, this is a roadworthy vehicle. But then what function do the sort of big kind of blobby Tesla ends, what do they serve?
My interpretation is that they are spring mounted, given the little bits of metallic sort of corkscrew. So perhaps they boing Perhaps they bump people away.
Maybe, although this is where you get into the difficulty of paint jobs at this scale and trying to make something look one way, trying to make it look like it's a metal surface that's arcing with electrical energy, as opposed to something that looks quite glassy or quite translucent and see-through. Because in some of the shots, these look like beads. They look like or like little glass domes that are sort of filled with water or something. It doesn't the illusion, it doesn't quite sell. But then you look at the rest of it, and it's just, I mean, it hits all those wonderful little buttons. And I think the effect on the sides, where the passenger and the driver's side doors are, I think those are meant to be like medals and awards that are just slapped on the sides.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading them as. Yeah, so it's like a kind of highly decorated cosmonaut has taken to the dust roads.
Yuri Gagarin has come back from the grave, and he's brought his Soyuz capsule with him to to wreak havoc on the raceway.
Obviously, shout out to all the freehand work at this scale. Yeah, it's a really nice set of work, particularly those stars on the booster rockets. Not easy at that scale. I'm not sure I would attempt it.
Considering this is probably a first attempt at painting Russian, I think yeah, he's done he's done a solid job there, without a shadow of a doubt. I think it is just those wheels, isn't it? If it's figuring out what's meant to be going on there. This is the thing. I am not not afraid to say to people, look, if you go back to this build at a later date, if you were to change anything, change the wheels, because they're the only thing letting this thing down. All the electrical effects, all the glowing lights, and all the OSL original source lighting effects you got going on here, Richard. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Wouldn't change any other aspect of the paint job. It is just the wheels, because they're just weird.
Yeah, we just can't quite read what they are. Yeah, like if there's supposed to be some kind of electrical effect, then maybe there needs to be something coming off them to sell that effect. So yeah, I don't know if they are supposed to be an effect or supposed to be an object.
But as always, Richard, fantastic work from you, my friend. And honestly, you've been putting out some banger builds this year. Let's just keep it going. Let's see what else you have in store for 2024.
Richard, love it. Good work, mate.
All right, then. So, if we are talking about insane Soviet super science builds with Tesla arc reactors and all that good stuff, how can we not look at the work of my boy Lewis Harrison and this mad hover vehicle? It's almost like an atomic bomb on the back, but it's what a wild build. And Lewis, for all the boys and girls watching at home, still brand new to the competition. He only just started entering last month, and for a second go at it, considering, because the thing is, we only get like 4 weeks from each competition starting. 4 weeks to create something like this when you're still new, like, mate, absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on the thing.
There is so much good stuff to say about this. The first thing that strikes me about it is the echoing of the roundness of the shapes. Like the vehicle that's been selected has got some roundness in its basic shape, but I'm assuming that each of these four wheel hover things has been created and stuck on. I don't know what they are. Are they Space Marine shoulder pads?
No, the Space Marine shoulder pads would be too small. I honestly think it will be... No, like many of the mad scientists that we have in this fine community of ours, I imagine there'll be like some trash-bashed, custom-made little caps, maybe from like a medicine bottle or something that he's stuck on there. Because it's actually a Ford pickup truck as a base, which is really quite strange, because that's an American truck that he's then turned into something very, very Russian, very sort of 50s sci-fi.
Yeah, and the roundness of the vehicle just echoes in the big round sort of bomb generator thing on the back. And I don't know, it just, for me, it just really works because the curves are echoed across the build, and so I get a lot of it really holds together for me.
That giant generator arc nightmare on the back, it could do all manner of different things, but this is still a Wasteland vehicle, so push the wrong red button and it could just explode, or it could turn the car invisible, or it could...
I really love the detail of the leaking green fluid out of the caps on the big power generator. It just really makes me wonder what the power source is, and how close to going wrong it is.
No, absolutely. It is not one that you want to bump into by accident. And as always, shout out to the people that make bases that are minimal and to the point and aren't dioramic, scenic bases for their cars. Like this is just enough stuff. It's got some grassy tufts and some little rocky outcrops, and that's it. That's all you need. And you can put a movement template up against that nicely, and everyone's happy.
But I also like that with a hover car, Louis worked quite hard to conceal the pin that's elevating it with some scenic elements underneath, but has then like kept the connection between the vehicle and the base using these little these little electricity sparks, which yeah, which are just like they're really cute and really ingeniously done and simple but super effective.
Yeah, and from a sort of a structural standpoint, because those are all going to be made from what looks like wire, they'll all be providing additional support to the actual car as well, rather than just a single pin underneath. So it not only helps sell the illusion, but also gives this a lot of life, actual play life on the table, because it's not just going to like snap off after one nudge or one drop on the floor.
Now,
But
James, what is your opinion on weapons painted silver? So it's pretty much the default choice. You get a weapon, you stick it on. The car gets a beautiful color, but then the weapon just gets painted gunmetal. What's your opinion on that?
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? Because what would this build actually lose if that little sort of triangular zapper on the hood, if that was just cut off and just thrown away? What would this build lose from that? Because that ball, that wonderful Tesla reactor at the back, that does all the heavy lifting. You don't really need this extra little bit at the front, which then just distracts you as you're looking at the rest of the build.
So one thing I think of with this is there's sort of like there's a rule in like character design in video games where wherever possible you should make things asymmetrical, because things just look cooler that way. So I think with this, like if you lost the gun off the front, you'd have a really stunning silhouette. It would perhaps be a little bit back heavy, and it might feel like the machine was going to tip over, which with this thing on the front, it feels less like, just because of the visual balance. But maybe if you moved the gun to one side or the other and created a lopsided or asymmetrical silhouette, maybe that would be the way to do it, or perhaps incorporate, you know, if these side panels, these extension wheel hover sticky out bits have been crafted, maybe the one on the left hand side would have a sort of crafted lump to contain the gun and have that shooting out of one side.
But yes, as always, Lewis, again, for a second time entering the competition, absolutely fantastic work. Just keep putting out these banger builds, and I look forward to what you have in store for May's competition. Oh, yes.
Awesome work, Lewis. All right, so we've seen jet blasters and we've seen crazy electricity effects and we've seen object source lighting. Combining all of that together is Molinaro's just wild build. I'm looking through the photos and trying to figure out which is the front, which is the back, and how the heck this thing stays upright on the table.
Well, that's the thing, because if you look at some of these photos, he's got additional thrusters at the back, but they're not actually touching the table. It's all lifted at the back and at the front. So he is our resident mad surrealist Frenchman, and the work he puts out is just incredible. And this is, just another fine example of that. I mean, the poor guy, when you really zoom in on the little driver inside his little protective sphere, he's lost both arms and both legs, but he's still manning this.
Was he injured before he was put in and this is his support system? Or is that like the necrotic effect of the energy draining holding pen that he's stuck in?
He's had one dose of radiation too many, so now he's just constantly giving out electrical energy, and this sort of siphons it all off and shoots it into these enormous lasers, which admittedly might be a bit overkill for my liking, but I would expect nothing less from Molinaro, because it's a wonderful build. I think he actually made this from one of those those big sort of electromagnet copper wire things that you find in like microwaves and old televisions and things like that.
Yeah, you can see the inside of that coil poking through in some of the places. I mean, for me, this just like This looks like a end of level boss in some kind of bullet hell video game. You know, I'm thinking like Enter the Gungeon or something. Like this guy's gonna kind of pop out and just there's missiles everywhere.
And that's the thing, you think, oh yeah, we'll just enter a nice casual game of Gaslands. Oh, the Mishkin team's coming. Oh, well, they just bring some like silly Russian weapons. Oh, it'll be fine. It won't be anything. And then this thing just hovers into view, and you're like, oh.
With Clint's build, we saw the use of wires, and they were sort of different colors, ramshackled, run in sort of deliberately unpredictable ways across the build. Here we've got a similar effect, but it's very methodical, and it's like, you know, this has been carefully constructed by a practiced engineer and super genius. All the wires are the same color; they're all neatly laid across the machine. And because it's got a good symmetry, but not a perfect symmetry in both the way that the wires are laid out, but also the kind of gubbins and stuff on the top. The overall effect is quite confusing visually, but then when you start to look at it and the forms begin to arrange themselves, there's just so much like detail that drags your eye around the build.
You're right, as your eye sort of looks around this, there aren't many just flat, plain areas to rest on. It is all hyper detailed, absolutely maximalist, all the way, everywhere you look, there is something going on, or a bit of exposed cabling, or something rusting, or sparking, or glowing. I mean, even from like the front, that wonderful little red light, that little, almost, you know, wonderful little highlight effects on the edge of that, just wonderful detail work. But then it's almost lost in this sea of just everything that's going on in this build, like all the little buttons and all the little details on top. I want to say you put an LED in this as well. That little bit of work would take quite a bit of time to actually put in place, all the wiring and battery and so on, and yet it's just completely lost in a sea of all the other detail. And it does need something. It needs like a little armor plate or something that it, you know, it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It can be rusty or with a bullet hole or whatever, but just something that you can kind of glance at and go, oh yeah, you know, I can rest here for a minute before the barrage of cables and lasers and glowing effects, which are all masterfully done. But it is a busy build. You could just spend hours just going into all the little fiddly bits.
And
Yeah,
that,
and the plastic shield over the front of the cockpit and everything. Anyway, Molinaro, just mind blowing. Can't understand how you achieve this. Fantastic work.
But if that is pushing the absolute surrealist front of a Mishkin build, let us come back to reality now. How? How can we not talk about the super colossus so far this year that is Matt Whittam and his entry this month? Oh, yes. Matt, who, as the boys and girls at home know, smashed January's competition, smashed March's competition, and hey, you never know, he might be on for a 3 for 3 this month.
So Matt's work is absolutely stunning. There's no question about it. You know, you've got tasty blends, which is, you know, for me, like really speaks to incredible cinematic looks. You've got all kinds of little details on the vehicle. And you've got this hilariously oversized sponsor foil. What would you call it at the back?
A spoiler, isn't it? But the double spoiler, but with
The lighting work, which is delightful. And there's a couple of photos here of it in the dark to help to help show off how bright this vehicle gets.
and as well the lovely little touch of there being just a tiny green LED in there as well, just for that suggestion of a radioactive nuclear reactor in the boot. I mean, it is just absolutely insane work, Matt, as we have come to expect from a regular Car of the Month winner at this point. I mean, the yellow into orange blend is just, it's divine, isn't it? That is a beautiful bit of work.
The color choices are really nice. And what I love is that from the top, it has this incredibly striking silhouette that's then accentuated by the details like the text and the hazard stripes. And it really sells the idea of like this being an experimental car that is out for its first or its third test, and it might explode at any moment.
Like there are elements of it that look like they've been changed and removed, and new armor panels and things added, like that wonderful sort of coppery armor windscreen at the front that looks like an additional part put in after a failed previous test run. Like it's a real lived-in build, and it is honestly. I mean, you'll see some of the previous work that Matt Whittam's done. It's just perfectly in keeping with that, and just goes to show, you don't have to go completely overboard when building something like this. You can just focus in on a simple car and just take it to the 10th degree and create something really impressive.
Great character design is often asymmetrical, and here almost every element has been made asymmetrical. So the gun is off center. The way that the front windshield is decorated is not, it's not broken evenly, and it's not the same either side. You've got different details on the different sides, windows. Even the foil at the back has got an element on one side that doesn't exist on the other, changing the silhouette a little bit. So yeah, and I just think if you want any single easy to apply tip for good builds, it's to deliberately make your builds unbalanced in small, subtle ways, not in massive, heavy ways. And it just, for me, it always sells a sort of more natural, realistic, but also more stylish and kind of eye-catching, and it guides your eye around the design.
Again, it is what we have come to expect from Matt Whittam in this competition. And honestly, I think we will continue to see amazing builds put out by him for the rest of this year. We need to move on finally to have a look at the work of Rob Churchill for this month. Oh, yes. And what can I say? Rob, my friend, buddy. I mean, when I saw this, I had to make this the thumbnail picture for this month's competition. I mean, just look at this, the wonderful modification work, and that there's something so retro about this without it being tongue-in-cheek. Because you look at like some of the stuff that Clint did and Lewis did, and you go, yeah, I get, you got the Tesla reactors on there, and it works, but it's a little goofy and a little bit sci-fi. This, as silly as this is, this feels so grounded and hard military, and it just works. It just works on so many levels, from the paint job to the weapon design, because that's a real retro sort of like robotic arm for a weapon on the side there.
Yeah, and the fun thing is, I really like the sort of military jet curves. I don't know if they're original to the back of the vehicle or if that's been built on top of, but they are offset by the squareness of the weapon. And so although the weapon fits very neatly into the silhouette of the vehicle, it's also the only thing that's like a completely different shape, and it's got all these angles and squares, whereas everything else is curved, which sort of draws attention to it being something different, but in a very sort of natural way that flows from the rest of the vehicle. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. As having owned that Hot Wheels car previously, those jet engines, that entire back part, that's all custom built. That is not stock at all. He's had to do all of that by hand. And there's a lot of modification at the front of this build as well, like just past the driver's seat with the sort of the raised up box section where he's built that wonderful little cockpit with all the little lights and buttons and little radar screen. And oh, honestly, Rob, my friend, you have outdone yourself this month. The only thing I would change, Rob, if I had to do anything to this build, it's gotta be the little jet engines at the back. It looks like you've tried to make a little fire effect coming out of each of them. Like they're powered on, but they're not in full blast mode. I just don't like the look of them. I just don't think they add anything to the rest of the build. And it's such a shame, because that's the only thing. The rest of the build is 10 out of 10 for theme, for build, for paint job. From the reflections on the visor, on the driver's helmet, everything works so beautifully well. It is just that tiny little bit on the jet engines on the back. Just snap those off or whatever, and it's perfect. But honestly, wonderful work, Rob. Yes, but sadly, my brothers, sadly, my comrades, we must move on. We must move on to everyone's favourite returning segment of the Car of the Month video, which is, of course, the spanner and spoon of praise and punishment. Oh, yes. And I think, needless to say, this month, the Chrome Spanner goes to, and look at the work of the one, the only Jeff Burbidge for this month. Again, another brand new contestant to this fine competition, and something a little bit more grounded, I think, compared to some of the previous entries. Like it's got all the working aspects of a crazy science Mishkin build with the wonderful little Tesla arc reactors and super weapon at the front.
Yeah, I mean this is just a straight down the line Gaslands build, and I absolutely love it. Like, I find it very easy to connect with the story of what's going on with this car. Like,
Yeah.
I'm immediately imagining what's going on behind and how this car got built, and it's got a really charming silhouette. The use of the chap on the back with the visor that echoes the artwork in the Refueled book, and you got to love a cracked windshield like that. I can't quite tell. Is that's a smashed bit of the plastic windshield that he's carefully put back in after the build has been painted, right?
Yes, yeah, that would actually be the windscreen that comes with that car that he's knackered with like a little nail and a hammer to create that wonderful webbing effect.
And
That's the sort of stuff that I'm always too lazy to like half build a car, fully paint it, and then assemble it. I always assemble and then paint later because I never know when I'm going to get around to painting. So I love that kind of patience where you are like, no, I'm okay to actually paint this thing, all complete the whole process before I actually get it on the table.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is the thing, Jeff, as a first time entry to the competition, what a way to make yourself known in the community. This is wonderful work, my friend.
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I really love all the griminess on the front of the car with the washes. Shout outs to the splattering of Scrag Brown everywhere.
The only advice I would give you, Jeff, because he's even done like a little tiny license plate at the front, like the level of detail, beautiful. But the only thing, my friend, is you've 3D printed so many bits for this build, but where are the scratch built elements? Where are, like, you break apart a biro pen or you snap apart an old calculator and you'll find wonderful little bits of plastic that you could use for improvised armor. You don't have to just 3D print the world. You can do a lot by hand, and that's the next step.
I hadn't noticed them until you point them out, but those license plates are to die for. Like, oh my god, I'm totally stealing that for my next build. Good work, Jeff. Nice one.
Again, fantastic work for a first time entrant to this competition. Here is one to keep an eye on, boys and girls. Here is one to be watching in the coming months. Oh, yes. But sadly, my friends, we must move on to the wooden spoon of this month. And, comrade, it breaks my heart to send you to the gulags in this way, but this month's wooden spoon goes to Troy Moss and his entry for this month. Oh, Troy, what are we doing, my friends? It's a bit all over the place, isn't it? I mean, don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad build. I mean, you've incorporated the base nicely and the paint's where it needs to be, and there is quite a nice theme going on here, this sort of energy reflector dish weapon that you've put together. It's just a bit all over the place in execution and I mean, this is the thing. It's just confusing to look at, isn't it? Because let me ask you this, boys and girls at home: if that back sort of laser assembly, if that wasn't in place, wouldn't the enormous jet engines, the enormous hover propulsion engines, just look so horribly overscale for this build? And therein lies the problem, Troy. There are elements of this build that are just too big. Like, I get it. I get what they're meant to be. I can see very clearly what they're meant to be. But they are bludgeoning me over the head with a hammer at the end of the day. It's a bit too in your face. The components are a bit too chunky for this. And you'd have been better off finding smaller jet engines, finding a smaller front ram. You still have to ground it in reality and the wasteland, and it's just too over the top. Like, this is the thing with that weapon array on the back, which I guess is made from like a hover drone or something from like Gates of Antares or some sci-fi futuristic tabletop wargame. If you didn't attach the great big laser blast effect, were you a bit worried that people wouldn't get it, that they wouldn't see the sort of Death Star, 4 points of light converging and, hyper energy weapon? Because you can look at it, you can understand it without all of that. You know, same as the cockpit where the little driver is, and the rear panel that looks like it's been raised up so you can see the driver. Like, that's wonderful. That plays so nicely into the build. But then it's just hidden, it's buried under all these massive pipes and details and engine and turbines and all this stuff around it, and it just gets lost. And it's about looking at what you're trying to do and go, right, let's try and rein in the madness a little bit, let's try and make this a little bit more grounded and realistic. It's not a bad build, Troy. It's just about trying to get things in scale. As always, my friend, I look forward to seeing what you come up with in May's Car of the Month competition. Oh, yes. But enough, my comrades, because you've been waiting long enough to see who the winner of this month is. So, without any further ado, start the drum roll, my brothers, because the winner of Gaslands UK's Car of the Month competition for April 2024 is Rob Churchill! Yes, congratulations, my brother! Come on down. Let's see what wonderful prizes we have won today. And honestly, it is not hard to see why we have picked you for first place, Rob, because it's just such a staggeringly good build, isn't it? It just ticks all the boxes, doesn't it? You know, this is the kind of casting that we all know, we all have, and you adapt and change it in so many beautiful ways. And honestly, absolutely adore this build, as Mike Hutchinson said himself.
Yeah, and the digital camouflage on all these curved surfaces, that would drive me mad. So yeah, if nothing else, the patience to get that stuff right, incredible work. Yeah, so I love this build. I think the silhouette is really unique, and I think you're right that the whole thing has a sort of, it just has a really earthy 70s vibe to it, which yeah, is super appealing. Yeah, that cockpit is so fun. That's really fun. What that makes me think of is it makes me think of all those little flat two-panel Lego pieces that we played with as kids, where you would build a spaceship, and of course you would have to put the little flat panel control ding dongs in. And so yeah, to see that and to build it in a way where the cockpit is open and you can see that stuff is such a nice detail.
Yeah, and that combined with all the wiring work that's again sort of conforms to the shape of the body but has a boxy feel to it. Just besides the driver on the right hand side where the weapon is, you've got like a little computer terminal with some little buttons and switches and things for programming that. But again, it doesn't feel like this is a purpose built racer. This feels like an experimental weapon. It feels like, okay, they've put that wonderful digital camouflage on, which is a son of a bitch of an effect to paint on. So kudos to you there, Rob. But like to have that sort of retro futurism in the build, it's very, it just works so nicely. Honestly, I'm at a loss for words, Rob. It's so good, so good. And this is the thing, there's just so many little details, there's so many little tricks that are so hard to pull off at this scale, and you've nailed them all perfectly, and you've nailed the look and the feel and the theme, and incorporated it with that Wasteland aesthetic that we all know and love so wonderfully well. Honestly, Rob, welcome to the Hall of Fame, my brother, and enjoy the 12 bottles of Dark Star molten metallic paints that are on their way to you as we speak. Oh, yes. But if Rob is in first, then who? Who has won second place for this month and the 6 bottles of paint? I can tell you that Darkstar has chosen that absolute Soviet heavyweight of the Armageddon that is the one, the only John Simpson Wedge, and his entry for this month. Oh yes, oh John, my friend, look at this wonderful build, this wonderful scrap jet, hyper futuristic, this Soviet super science space shuttle of an entry. I love it. I absolutely love it. And you know what they did too? Because the amount of attention to detail that's gone into this build, from little nuts and bolts and rivets to beautifully painted hazard stripes and those wonderful iconic red stars on what look to be adjusted and adapted Soviet military planes. Honestly, this just ticks every box and works so nicely, John, so nicely. So enjoy my comrade, the 6 bottles of paint that are on their way to you right now. Oh yes. And finally, in 3rd place, how could we not celebrate the ongoing achievements of the one, the only Lewis Harrison in this fine competition of ours? Lewis, my friend, this is the kind of work that we want to foster. This is the growth that we want to encourage in this community. You have produced amazing builds since entering this fine world of ours, and I hope you just continue to come back and give us more, because we love it. We love your builds, we love your conversions, and we want to share the love. So enjoy the 3 bottles of paint that are on their way to you as we speak. Oh yes. But sadly, that is all that we have time for today. As always, if I could go over every single entrant that enters this fine competition, you know that I would, but there is not time enough in the day to talk about them all and look at them all. So do not despair, because as one month ends, another begins. That's right. The only way to take part is to check out the Gaslands UK Facebook page, soon to be highlighted by our Lord and Master, the creator, Mike Hutchinson, on his own social media channels and websites. If you've enjoyed today's competition, why not check out Big Cartel and have a look at some of the fine merchandise that we bring to you. As always, hashtag buy James a mug. I want a mug. Someone buy me a mug. Oh yes. To close out this month's video, again, thank you so much, Mike, for getting involved in this fine competition of ours. Rest assured, boys and girls at home, this is not the last that you have seen of the creator of the Wasteland. He will return to us.
But I haven't done any builds for a while, so I think I will get on the Car in the Month bandwagon, if not this coming month, but the month after, and submit my humble builds for James's searching feedback.
No, absolutely. And remember, boys and girls watching at home, if you want to take part in the Gaslands UK Car of the Month competition, just head on over to the Facebook page. It runs every single month, as it has done for the last 5 years, my friends. And there are prizes to be won, sometimes cash money prizes, but no, all are welcome, and I look forward to seeing what you have in store for us, Mr. Hutchinson. And a massive shout out, thank you as always, to every single member of the admin team. From the top we have, in reverse order, David Bousset, Darren Phillips, Colin Harvard, and of course, Matt Reeve, that scurvy scallywag. As always, thank you so much for watching, my friends, and I look forward to seeing you all in May's Car of the Month competition. Oh yes, until we meet again, my comrades, dos vidania. Oh yes.